Well, I was part of, I was a young colonel, if there is such a thing, working in the Pentagon in the late 90s, and was privy to and a participant in the discussions about the revolution of military affairs and about defense transformation. And it was very good work done by very bright, well-meaning people. I personally believe, looking back at myself, I'm not looking at either the institution or those that manned it in those days, but I personally believe that I was a bit, and potentially we were a bit, seduced by the promise of technology in that euphoria of the revolution of military affairs. And it was sort of euphoric, and we made some decisions about organizational design and about systems acquisition on the promise that technology could deliver knowledge dominance. If you recall, those revolutions were based on the promise that technology could deliver knowledge dominance. We could, you recall, see first, we could understand first, we could act first, and in so doing we could win decisively. Technology would also allow us to develop the situation from standoff. And then, when appropriate, we could deliver munitions with great precision. And in consequence of that, our formations could be less, let's call it less robust, less redundant, because with knowledge dominance, you could precisely target, both with guided munitions, but also with your ground formations. You could precisely target them because you had knowledge dominance. I mean, look, the lessons of the last 9 years of war have revealed that, first of all, that our adversaries read what we write, incidentally. And so the adversaries we confront today, in addition to having the capabilities I described previously that are very competitive to our own, they've also understood where we completely overmatch them, and they avoid that. So they don't mass, they decentralize. They don't hide out in open fields, they mingle among the population. They network using emerging commercial technologies. They syndicate, they form ad hoc groups for particular periods of time, and then they disperse again. That could be criminal groups or terrorist groups or militia groups. So what essentially happened is this promise of knowledge dominance was unfulfilled. I mean, it just simply was unfulfilled. It's important for me to caveat here, though, that I'm not, though I grew up in Bayonne, New Jersey in the 50s with a, black rotary phone with a wire hanging out of the wall, tethered to a coiled little black wire that allowed me to speak into the instrument. I'm not a Neanderthal when it comes to technology. I'm not advocating we go back to clubs and rocks, slingshots. What I am suggesting, and what we've suggested in these documents, is that we have to be cautious about technology. And that some of the decisions we made in organizational design, for example, on the promise of technology, because they've been unfulfilled and are not likely to be fulfilled, should be reconsidered. So what we're suggesting in the Army capstone concept and the Army operating concept, and what will emanate from it, is that we challenge, or at least relook. My suspicion is we will eventually challenge some of the and perhaps many of the assumptions of the revolution of military affairs and defense transformation, as well as, incidentally, some of the assumptions of modularity. And then, in a deliberate way, we bring decisions to key leaders on force mix, force design, grade distribution, and we articulate where technology can enable, because technology is a wonderful enabler. But I think our projections into the future will be more grounded and less leap ahead as a result of this analysis. Yes, the Army's going in the right direction, which is to say that the Army does what the nation asks it to do. And we have an Army that has demonstrated incredible resiliency and courage and resolve and determination. And when I talk about the Army, I'm talking equally about those in uniform, the families that support them, and our DA civilians. If you had told me 5 years ago, I'm not the first to use this phrase, but I actually agree with it completely. If you had told me 5 years ago that we would still be deploying units at the pace at which we're deploying them, and not just units, but individual augmentees and doing the kind of missions we're doing across a broad spectrum of capability, whether it's humanitarian relief in Haiti or disaster relief on the Gulf Coast, or what we're obviously doing in Iraq and Afghanistan and in the other combatant commands around the world. I'd probably have told you, if you'd said 5 years ago we'd still be at this pace today, 5 years later, I'd probably have told you were out of your mind. Because I didn't think that a volunteer force of the size we have at a one-to-one, essentially one-to-one boots on the ground dwell ratio could sustain itself. Now, we have exposed some potential challenges because of that pace. We already mentioned wide area security combined arms maneuver, and our training regimen right now is very firmly fixed, as it should be, against the wide area security responsibility, because that's what we're doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. However, there are scenarios clear to everyone that could involve maneuver, and we've got to rekindle those skills to accomplish that responsibility. We have, in many cases, pushed to the right, tabled some of our leader development, professional military education. We're a profession because we have a monopoly on the use of force on behalf of the nation when force is required. And as you might expect, from that monopoly on force comes incredible responsibility to wield it with integrity, with character, with judgment, all of which says that in order to continue to maintain our stature as a profession, someone said to me, by the way, you're not a profession just because you say you are. You have to actually earn it and re-earn it. There's 8 or 9 principles that define our profession. Everything from special skills and expertise, which you gain in a training environment, to credentialing or certification. Professionals credential each other. That gets at promotions and selections. There's the commitment to professional education, to continue to develop yourself both inside the schoolhouse, inside units, and through self-development. There's self-regulation. There's responsibility to civilian authority. There's just a series of principles that against which we have to measure ourselves frequently. And what I'd suggest is that we're probably at one of those times in our history. In my own 36 years of service, we went through a period of, let's call it, transition and introspection right after Vietnam. We did it again right after Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And I'm not predicting the end of either OIF or OEF, but I would suspect that those demands will diminish. And when they do, as they do, we should be prepared to go through a similar period of transition and introspection. And I think we ought to begin that now. So when you say, is the Army going in the right direction? I mean, the answer is absolutely. I couldn't be prouder of our Army. But I will be equally proud of it when it allows itself to go through this period of transition and introspection and then come out on the other side a better Army.